any tech questions or concerns that you might have. Mr. Ken O'Connor is our East Coast national sales manager, so he'll be able to help you out on the East Coast. And you'll get that information here in just a little bit. So we're going to cover a lot of different stuff, like I mentioned. We're going to cover very briefly who we are, more of a quick review, a good way to get a nice brand story about who SureCall is, at least be able to put a story together so you can tell your end user, your customers. Then we're going to get into how to use through a site survey, to work on the signal meter and how to use what's the ins and outs of that, some of the tools of the trade, so one of the different websites and access points that we have to be able to help find different frequencies. We're also going to look at where the antennas are at, or the towers are at, so you can kind of figure out which way mounting the antennas would go for you, so you can point it directly at different towers, especially if you're in more of a remote or a rural area. And then we'll show you again some of the marketing assets that's there, and then we'll give you a brief glimpse at the test as mentioned here. So who is SureCall? SureCall itself has been around for just about 15 years, going on 16 years now. And we truly believe that we're the performance leader in cell phone booster technology. We don't just put an emphasis on the product itself, which is very important to do. We put a very large emphasis on the product support side of the world, technical support. So it doesn't matter how you wander out and install the product itself. The support structure that we have from SnapAV and, of course, through SureCall directly is top-notch. We just really believe that we are world-class. We're based out of Fremont, California. This is where we design and manufacture all of our award-winning cell phones. And if I look at all the different boosters that we make, they all have something in common. So they're all an all-carrier booster, meaning that we'll work with all of the different cell phone providers that are out there and all of their technologies. So they're all what we call 5-band booster. So it'll work with 2G, 3G, 4G, LTE, and then some other ancillary data networks that are out there. We use the best technology and the best components in the inside of the boosters we can. We have some new boosters that are coming out that we'll show you that will have, they're all software driven, so there's no more dials on them. But again, we do make some boosters that do have some of the dials for more of the higher end or more commercial jobs that you need to really fine tune a particular booster for you. All of our boosters do have a 3-year manufacturer's warranty on it. Any issues with the booster, get in touch with us, get in touch with your Snap team, and they'll be able to kind of help you muddle the way through the RMA process so we can get you a direct replacement on that booster. We also look at the construction of the boosters as being a little bit different way than a lot of competitors develop their boosters. Every one of our boosters is made of metal. It's just an amplifier at the end of the day, so we have to be able to dissipate the heat to ensure that we have a constant performance with the booster itself. Just like anything else in the AV world, heat is your biggest enemy that's out there. And again, all of the other products, the technical support that we have is available to you, so feel free to reach out to us or your Snap team to be able to give you the best type of customer support that you would need. So what causes a weak cell phone signal? As you may remember, if you attended the last training, we talked about the 3 different culprits that are out there: building materials, the terrain, and the distance from the cell tower. All 3 of these play a major role as to how well your phone is going to work on the inside and potentially even the outside of a building itself. Depending on that outside signal strength is going to determine if we can truly be able to utilize one of our booster systems in there. Remember, too weak of a signal or no signal on the outside of the building, it's not going to help you with the cellular signal booster because you're amplifying 0. So as the old saying goes, garbage in, garbage out, it truly lives within our realm as well. And then there's other opportunities that if the signal is too strong, so if we're in that -50 or stronger, -45, -50, 55, we want to look at that as a very strong signal. We may want to be able to have some type of an attenuator to ensure that we can get a lower signal into the booster itself. Not always something that we have to do, but those are kind of the 2 different extremes: way too strong of a signal and way too weak of a signal that's out there. So how do we know where the signal's at? And this is where this presentation is going to kind of differ from what we've done in the past here. That pre-work is very, very important. And when you get the copy of this presentation, you'll see that on each one of the pages, there's a different link that you can click on that'll take you directly to, in this particular case, the building recommendation page. This building recommendation page is going to sheet will help you, help us understand what type of an install we're looking for here. It's going to help us determine the best location for our outdoor antenna. It's going to ensure that we have the proper signal or adequate signal on the outside of the building before we even start getting into the what systems we want to install, how many antennas we want to install. But that will also then help us to ensure where the best locations for the inside antennas are going to be. So as we're going through the certification questionnaire, there's going to be some main questions on here that are pretty important to us, like which carriers are you looking to enhance reception for? It's important for us to know because not all carriers use the same towers. There may be multiple towers in a particular area, and if it's an all Verizon customer or an all AT&T customer, we want to be able to ensure that we can give them the best service for their particular carrier. If they say, hey, I got to use all carriers, I don't care if it's Verizon, Sprint, whichever one it might be, it's a prepaid customer, it's fine with us. We just want to know that we can help kind of push the antenna location in the right area for us. The next question that we're going to ask is, how much do we have, what type of service are they looking for? Is it just for voice or is it voice and data? Now, it's kind of an older question to be able to ask because all the boosters will do all the technologies for us, but it's still important because there are towers that are out there that may only do a voice network and may not have the 4G or LTE tower antennas for a particular carrier. And as we go down this particular list, it becomes, this is what's going to help us understand what type of a booster system that we're going to want to be able to recommend. So how many of the estimated users or cellular users can there potentially be at one time using the phone? The reason why we ask that is just like on a cellular network itself, so the cellular towers themselves, there's not an unlimited amount of capacity. There is a capacity limit for these towers, and the same thing with our boosters themselves. Some of our boosters will handle up to 8 simultaneous users, some will handle up to 20, some will handle up over 100. So depending on the installation and the job that we're going into, will help us determine which booster is going to be right for that particular customer. Then, of course, square footage, the approximate dimensions of the building itself, what type of building materials are in it. Is it metal studs, 2x4 studs, 2x6 studs? Is it concrete and metal in between the floors themselves? And those types of questions will all help us understand what type of a booster system and what it's going to look like by the time we get done with it. And as we look at the different questions, some of the other questions that I want to make sure that we understand, you guys are asking yourselves is, besides the outside signal itself, is what type of cable are we utilizing for this install? So is this a pre-wire that we can get into and we can utilize the SureCall cable? All of our boosters do work with an LMR 400 series cable or a 50 ohm style cable with end connectors on it. The reason why we utilize that cable is just because this is a numbers game. And when I start showing you guys the math later on in this presentation, you'll understand that loss plays a very big role as to if we can make the system properly function once the install is done. But it doesn't mean we can't use RG6 or RG11, especially if you're in a job that's already pre-wired and it's very difficult to run new cable. We can absolutely utilize it. We just want to know that we can do the proper math. We can set up the system for you. But more importantly, we can get you those pesky little N to F adapters so we can convert down to a 75 ohm cable. And then, of course, some of the other questions that you want to make sure when you're inspecting the site survey is what areas of the building are a must cover. And I know it seems like kind of a silly question to ask because a lot of the customers go, well, I want the whole building covered. We understand that. But just like with a wireless system, a Wi-Fi system, we want to be able to understand where you're going to spend most of your time. In the residential area, it's probably going to be that kitchen, den, maybe office area. And we're going to start the network there, and we're going to build the network out from that particular system. But we're going to treat our antennas just like you would with a wireless access point system when you're installing them into a home to ensure we get that corner-to-corner coverage within the home itself. When we look at a design service, we're able to provide different design services. And once you submit, if you have a drawing, if you can submit the drawing with the building recommendation form, we will turn around and provide a service that will give you more of an antenna layout system so you can have an understanding and give a more accurate quote. And the reason why I say accurate quote is because this will give you the ideas to cable runs, cable lengths, the hours it might take for your team to be able to go out there and install the cables. So you can have a better understanding as to what it's going to truly cost at the end of the day, and we're not overbidding and potentially losing jobs. So this is a service that we offer to anybody that's out there, regardless of the square footage of a project. I know on here it says up to from 6,000 square feet and larger, but we're here to help you. So if you have a house that's 4,000 square feet or a small office that's 4,000 square feet, 3,000 square feet, let us know. We'll be able to point you in the right direction to ensure that we get you the proper antenna layout so you can set the expectations for your customers. All right, so utilizing that outside signal on the signal meter itself. As mentioned earlier, we do have that $50 off promo for purchasing a signal meter. And the reason why it's an important product to have within a tool within your tool chest is I know a lot of us that are out there are utilizing our phones, either typing in the code for an iPhone or going into the Android service and settings and seeing the actual signal strength. While that is a good way to be able to look, it only gives you the readings from your particular carrier. So just as I stressed it last go around, just please be careful that if you are a Verizon customer and your customer is on AT&T that you're providing service for, you may not get an accurate signal reading, so you may not be able to provide the best service at the end of the day. And that's unfortunate with some of these apps that we have on there. However, the signal meter is a very important meter for us to be able to utilize because of a couple of different reasons. One of them is it gives you the readings from all the spectrum from all the carriers that are out there, from their voice to their data networks. And it would allow you to inspect each one of these instead of, just like I mentioned on your phone, just the phone itself. So as we look at the meter on our right here, or the bar graph on our right side that has the -60 up to that -110 number, once you get to that -102 number, we really have to take a step back because it's a pretty weak signal. And a booster that might be able to cover 20,000 square feet might only be able to provide us with 6,000 to 8,000 square feet of coverage because the outdoor signal is so weak. So we just want to ensure that we can set the right expectations for a customer. It doesn't mean we can't do the system. We may have to add a second system in there to maybe one for upstairs, one for downstairs to give them that, that corner-to-corner coverage. But as we continue to build the system itself and we look at the stronger signals that are out there, the systems really truly live up to the expectations and the square footages that we post on our marketing material itself. So that's the signal meter itself, an essential tool. If you have a signal meter with you, I would urge you to pull that thing out, take a look at it. If you don't have one just yet, I would definitely pick one up pretty quick here. There are 3 distinct modes on our signal meters that allow us to inspect each frequency and eliminate the overload or limit issues prior to installation. So when you get the signal meter, if you hold down the top left button where it says light switch, it'll toggle between mode 1, mode 2, and mode 3. So I'm going to start with mode 1, and then we'll talk about mode 3 and the importance of it and how we utilize it. But mode 1 allows you to read between, taken between each block. So each carrier, if I look on the screen here, it says Cellular 800. We're on mode 1, Cellular 800 in block A, and then I have the same thing down below, Cellular 800 in block B. The reason why I don't know what the frequencies are with these two is just because all I'm doing is identifying the blocks themselves. What a block means is kind of like on a walkie-talkie or a CB radio when you have the channel 1 through 9. The carriers use the same frequencies as each other or similar frequencies, but they're on different blocks. So block A could be AT&T, block B could be Verizon. And we'll show you which carrier, how to find which carriers are using which blocks here in a little bit. But this is important to look at, especially if you're in a more urban setting, where the outdoor signal is pretty strong, you can really kind of pinpoint the different carriers that are out there. Mode 2 allows you to go frequency by frequency by frequency. So mode 2 is very good if we have to inspect, hey, I only care about Verizon, I don't care about any other manufacturer or carrier that's out there. We have to make sure that this works for Verizon. We can then go in, do the research, find what the Verizon frequencies are, and then we can inspect just those particular frequencies. However, if you were to do a site survey utilizing mode 1 and mode 2, there's probably about 50 different numbers you'd have to write down. So it can take quite some time to do a full site survey. It'd be done very, very well. You would have all the information that we would ask you for. But to do a very first level, first round site survey, mode 3, again, is going to be one of your best modes to use. And what mode 3 does is it takes the entire frequency range for each one of the different frequencies that are out there. So LTE for AT&T, for Verizon, the Cellular 800, the PCS 1900, and then the AWS 2100 frequency. And it will give us an average signal strength by taking your highs and your lows with the numbers that are, the software will put out the numbers for us. So this is a great way to write down 5 numbers when you do a site survey just to inspect at a high level, can I even make a system work? Instead of going through the entire site survey process, you can look at these numbers, and as long as these numbers are better than this bottom one, a 102, or stronger, we can definitely make a system work within that job site. So the signal meter is a very important tool for us to be able to utilize. But if we start looking at the different frequencies and how do we find these different assets that are out there, it can be quite challenging. So I know we mentioned these in the past go around here, but we are going to quickly get out of this and go right into the website pages here. So the first one that we have is called the Spectrum. And if I go to the Spectrum and I look at the different opportunities, this is specmap.sequence-omega.net. And what this will allow me to do is this will allow me to pull up the entire United States. And just because I live in Chicago, I'm going to pull up the Chicago market here. I'm going to go in by carrier up on this top right tab over here, and then pick a carrier. So I'm going to pick on AT&T. And now what this is going to allow me to do is I'm not going to go into the LTE network just yet. I'm worried about voice right now. So I'm going to click on these different frequencies that we have, and you can see that on block A or band A, AT&T is utilizing these frequencies within this highlighted area here. Now as I go down, I go, well, I wonder where block B might be. I can click on block B, and block B you can see just pretty much drops right off. But Eric, I'm out here in this middle of nowhere, northwest portion of Illinois. What frequency are they using out there? We would have to go through each one of the different blocks and frequencies that they offer to find out which one that might be. So if we look at their PCS, they utilize a very large voice network on that PCS. We call it 1900. It's a 1930 to 1945. There's a big portion as to what they're utilizing as well for voice. So this website's a great website to be able to go into to stop and take a look at not only AT&T, but you can see Verizon, Sprint, T-Mobile, some of the regional carriers that are out there to really be able to help us inspect what we expect, and it helps us then ensure that we have the proper frequencies that we're working with when we start looking at site survey. This really more comes into play too is if we had a more of a troubleshooting or tech issues that are out there, then we really can kind of dive in to find out which frequencies, how we can realign an outdoor antenna to give us better service within the home itself. So another good asset that we utilize is what we call antennasearch.com. Now antennasearch.com is not run by us. It is a third-party partner of ours that does run this particular website. But what we enjoy about this site here is it's updated about every quarter. We're not necessarily putting new towers up every month, but they do go up. But if we type in whatever address it might be, and then I click on View Tower Results, you will see here that it pulls up. It goes up here. It'll pull up the home or the building location that you're looking at, and then it pulls up all these different antennas and towers that are around us. Now all these little dots here, these little pins, those are different towers that may not be up 100% yet, or they might be old towers that are down. What we really want to focus on are things like this particular one here that tells us this is a T-Mobile tower itself, registered number 1. And if I go down just a little bit here, I can kind of see how far away it is, how high up it is, to help us with our aiming. And if you click on the actual link itself, it's going to come down here and tell you a little bit more information about it, who owns it, who's going to be utilizing this particular antenna. In this particular case, it's just T-Mobile. So nobody else is on that tower but the T-Mobile network. If I look at the Ameritech one that's out here, or even some of the AT&T towers that are here, you can just start clicking on them to find out where they're at, who's utilizing them. And it'll give you a better understanding now, because in this particular area, I know this area well, it's a pretty strong signal area. You wouldn't necessarily have to aim a tower and one of our outdoor antennas at a particular tower, just because the outdoor signal is so strong. So an omni antenna in this particular area would work out pretty well. If we were getting out west of Illinois, west of the city a little bit more here, and let's just say we lived off of this West Lake Street where the towers are further away, this is the opportunity then we'd want to utilize one of our stronger outdoor antennas. And again, all this comes into play when you do that building recommendation and really have a better understanding as to what we're working with an outdoor signal. So let me get back into this here. So how do we know once you turn in the site survey and the building recommendation form, you give us the drawings, how do we know what the system really is going to look like and what it's going to run, how it's going to work? There's a lot that goes into it. And again, numbers, like I said before, this is just a numbers game. So for us to be able to sit here and say, yes, it'll work without having some information, kind of like throwing darts at a dartboard blindfolded. We might hit it, but we're not 100% sure. So the goal for this, and this is a task that you guys can even do on your own, so you're not 100% sure, or once you get into this and you start filling more and more of them, it becomes much easier for you to be able to do a quick site survey and understand, yes, this is going to work, no, it's not going to work, I'm going to stop at this point. But the goal is to get to what's the word I'm looking for here, a virtual or a theoretical negative 20 decibel milliwatt. That's our theoretical number that we want to hit. So how do we get to that? So for this particular example, let's just say we had that negative 97 on the outside. That was our starting signal that we're working with. Not a great signal, but it's a good enough signal that we can ensure that we can get great coverage throughout the home itself. So how do we get to that negative 20 number? In this particular instance, what we want to do is we want to take all of our gains and we want to add all those up. So in this particular case, our outdoor antenna, so you use because it's a weaker outdoor signal, we're utilizing a Yagi antenna, and this is going to give us an additional 12 dB of gain. Our amplifier we know is a 72 dB gain, and then our inside antennas themselves are 6 and or 7, depending on the booster itself. So I went with this particular case, I went with a lower one. With the inside antenna being a 6 dB, in this case here, gives us a total gain, system gain of 90 dB. And then we want to take that and subtract all of our loss. So in this particular instance, we only want to look at one leg. So if I have 4 antennas on a system, each antenna has to have a different equation put to it. But we know that right off the bat, we have a 75-foot run coming in, which is a loss of about 5 1/4 dB. Coming out of the booster, we had a 50-foot run going to the splitter. And then for the first run over here, we had a 25-foot run, which you can see the loss is at 1.63 dB. Just every 100 feet of LMR 400 is about a 6.5 dB loss, give or take, depending on the frequency. But in this particular instance, our first run cable loss is a negative 13, and our second run, because it was a longer leg coming out of the splitter, was a negative 14. So if I take those different losses, and all I do here is I do negative 97 for my outdoor signal, I add in my gain, and I subtract my loss, which gives me that 20.13 for the first run, or 21.75, which is pretty darn close to my goal, my installation goal of being at that negative 20. So again, just in a very quick recap, your outdoor signal, you have to add all the gain to it, so a negative number plus a positive number, and then minus your loss. That will give us that installation goal, that negative 20 dBm. Once we have that and we know we can theoretically hit that number, that will then help us turn around and ensure that we know the systems are going to work going forward. This is a good practice to be able to utilize to get kind of a high-level overview utilizing that mode 3 on the signal meter itself. So once we looked at the installation goals themselves, now we get to look at the product itself. Again, all these links for the different products will bring you right to the Stamp AV page that has the products on there, so you can get the product information sheets. But just a really quick high-level overview on the product itself. Again, all of them have a 3-year warranty, lifetime pre- and post-tech sales support. The Easy 4G product is an awesome product if you don't have the ability to get to an outside. Maybe this is a condo, it's an office complex where you cannot penetrate the outside of the building. And it'll give you 1 to 2 rooms worth of coverage without having to go to the outside of the building. Fusion for a Home is a booster that allows us for an outdoor antenna, and it comes in multiple configurations. This particular configuration that we would want to look at has the outdoor, I have the wrong picture on here, so I do apologize. It's got a Yagi antenna and a panel antenna that's in this kit, which retails for $549. And those two kits what we consider more to be 1 to 2 room or maybe 1 floor solution. We're looking at whole home or larger solutions there. The Fusion 5S will cover up to about 6,000 square feet worth of coverage. And then our bigger systems with the Fusion 5X, which is our newest booster, and the Force 5 booster itself will give us considerably larger coverage. The Fusion 5X is up to 20,000 square feet, and the Force 5 is up to 25,000 square feet. The main difference between these two boosters, again, is user capacity. The Fusion 5X can handle up to 20 simultaneous users, when the Force 5 can handle over 100 simultaneous users. Some of the other accessories that you can put onto these devices themselves are like our Sentry device, which is a remote monitoring piece. And this will help you monitor the booster itself. It does require network connection, but it'll help you monitor the Fusion 5S as in Sam, the 5X, and the Force 5 for overpowering, meaning too strong the signals coming in, oscillation, just in case you have your outdoor antennas and your indoor antennas are pointing at each other, and they might be talking to each other. We'll talk about that here in just a minute. Over attenuation, meaning that we have too much attenuation coming up and not enough signal going out. And then it gives you the ability to adjust different lengths and or bands within that particular frequency, so you can really custom fit it into the customer's house. More importantly, it kind of keeps you up on top, right? It makes you aware of what's going on before the customer even knows it usually. Once you do a setup on it, you'll get an email that'll say that Mr. and Mrs. Smith's house is having an issue. You can log into the system here. Once you get into it, you can reset the booster remotely, increase, decrease the gains. This is also a great tool for our tech team to be able to help you guys with troubleshooting if there is some type of an issue that's out there. So cool product. It's a one-of-a-kind. Nobody else does it in the industry, and we don't charge a monthly recurring charge for it. So it's an awesome device to be able to add, especially if you're doing any type of recurring revenue model. Something you can just add to it is more of a bigger opportunity for your customers here. So then when it comes down to this antenna placement, if we went back and we looked at the drawing that we had here, where did that big one go? So if we look at the drawing that we had, this gives us a great understanding as to how big the building is, the cable paths, and the cable runs that are coming into it. If there's ever an instance where you just can't get an antenna to a particular area, you call us up, hey, this particular run that you gave us, we can't get an antenna over there, it's firewall, we can't get through it. We'll redesign it for you so we have the different access points so we can move the antennas around. But regardless of how the system looks and how we install the system itself, there's some key basic features that we want to make sure that we look at. The first and foremost is if we're utilizing a Yagi outdoor antenna, which is the airplane wing looking antenna, we have to make sure that we don't place this antenna on the corner of the roof and shoot it over the top of the house. What will end up happening is that will end up causing oscillation. That essentially is because your outdoor antenna is acting like a microphone, and it's picking up all of your inside antennas. And it just starts as one big feedback loop. And once it starts a feedback loop, it's never going to stop. So because of the FCC rules and the carrier rules, the booster will go through a protocol. It'll sense it's oscillating. It will then turn off the particular band. It'll reset the band, but it'll do this 5 particular times. Now, it doesn't happen very fast. It could be 15 minutes per cycle. But after it goes through that 5 times, if we cannot correct the oscillating issue that's on it, it'll shut the booster off. So it's very important to ensure that my outdoor antenna is facing away from the building, especially if I'm using a higher powered Yagi antenna, the airplane wing antenna. The other trick is, if you notice on our diagram here, with a panel antenna, which is really designed for more penetration, it can penetrate through walls itself stronger because it's a higher gain antenna. It can also go down further. It can shoot about 60 feet from the antenna itself. So if you had a long hallway, big open space that you had to penetrate down into, it's a great antenna to be able to utilize for that. But if you notice on this particular drawing, it's not pointing up towards or in the direction of where that outside antenna is for the same reason. It's going to pick each other up. It's going to create this oscillating loop, and the booster over time will just shut down on you. So just make sure that when we're installing the antennas, they're pointing away from each other, and that'll give you the best type of service that we possibly can. And once you set these things, with the software on the inside of the booster, they truly are a plug and play. Even with the boosters that have the manual dials, the gain control dials on it, it's a true plug and play solution for you guys, so that the software does most of the work for you. If it comes down to using that first option, the Omni antenna, where I would use this particular style antenna again is if it's a very strong outdoor signal and more an urban setting, and I'm in a large city area with a high outdoor signal strength. The reason why we can utilize that is because it's a weaker outdoor antenna. It doesn't have the 12 dB with the gain as like our Yagi does, but it also will pull in signal from every direction, 360 degrees around it, so it can then work better with all the different carriers that are out there to pull in their signals no matter which way their towers are coming from. But that's going to get mounted on the outside of the building. Gets ran in through, penetrate the building with the LMR 400 and the SureCall 400 cable. That gets installed into the booster, And then out of the booster, depending on how many antennas we're doing, right? It's either going to be one antenna, it could be two, but up to 4 antennas on most of the consumer boosters that we work with. So we come out of the booster itself. If it's a multiple antenna system, it'll be a splitter. And then we go out to each one of the independent antennas themselves. The only other trick that we have to worry about are the mounting locations and how we mount the inside antennas. The dome antennas are a great antenna to be able to cover a very large open space. They've been very well received in the industrial world, commercial world. A lot of hotels, a lot of our consumers in their homes will allow us to place them in closets, up in the corner of pantries. The only trick that you have to be careful of is you do need access above it to be able to secure the antenna. The reason for that is there's a nylon bolt and a nylon nut that you have to be able to get on top of the thing and screw it on to hold it in place. There are some guys that call me and say, hey, I put liquid nails on it and I held it up that way. But if your customer's okay with it, you got to do what you got to do. Some guys will put just in the corners a couple screws. I can't condone putting screws and holes through the antennas themselves. I don't know what it's going to do to the functionality of it. But the guys who have done it have been very successful with it. If you do have to mount something more on the first floor, we do not have access above. The panel antennas have a simple bracket, kind of like hanging a TV. The bracket goes on the wall, it's held in with 4 screws, and then the antenna actually just slides right onto it. We also make, for the panel antenna, an in-wall mounting kit, so it becomes more of like an in-wall speaker. So it gives you an opportunity to kind of flush it into the walls themselves. You can paint the housing itself so it blends in a little bit better. And again, it makes it look more like an in-wall speaker than anything else. So that's really, when you come to the installation part of it, it's a pretty self-explanatory system. It's the planning beforehand that'll help you ensure that we have a proper install. But what happens when we have to look at troubleshooting? Because there are some times when your customer's in there and it works great today, and a couple weeks down the road there might be an issue. Usually there's not, but sometimes there can be an issue. Maybe a storm came through, maybe a tower you're pointing at got turned off from the carriers, whatever the issue might be. The booster itself is going to allow you to understand what's happening with it. So if you don't have the Sentry on the device, when you go back, if you had to go do a troubleshooting or a visit back to the customer's house, you'll be able to see on these little lights, these little LED lights that are on here, they will flash different colors. When you open up the box, there's a big yellow piece of paper sitting right up on top of it that tells you what each one of the color codes means. So keep that handy. A lot of the guys will tape it right next to the booster itself. That way if there is an issue with it down the road, they can go in there, they can look and quickly be able to assess what the issue is. But as an idea, the green light on the Force 5 is the power light, which is on the top middle of the box itself. All the other boosters, power light, the green light, is right next to the toggle on and off switch. If I looked at beyond that, I'm going to start with the colors that are okay to work with because we're not going to spend too much time on them. But there is a flashing yellow light. Flashing yellow or amber on the booster itself is okay. It's normal operation. Flashing yellow just means that the automatic gain control, the software, is adjusting the gain up or down to be able to fit within the specifications of the FCC and the carrier rules. That's all that it means that it's doing. And it's normal operation. If it goes to a solid yellow, that is also normal operation. Solid yellow just means that there is no uplink signal, meaning that my phone, let's say it was Verizon LTE, and I'm an AT&T subscriber, the Verizon LTE network isn't going to be necessarily utilized in my building. So that particular network will go to sleep, and it'll be solid yellow. Now, if one of my friends came over or a coworker came over that did have Verizon, it would automatically recognize that. If they're making a phone call, it'll immediately turn it back on, so it sends the signal back out to the Verizon towers. It's more of an energy-saving feature than anything else, so we can go more green with our boosters, so we're not always running at full tilt. The red are the concerning ones. So if you have a flashing red, that means that your boosters, this incoming signal into the booster is just too strong. And you can do a couple different things. I'm going to go back to this antenna picture, placement picture here. If you were directed right at the antenna, the tower, the cellular tower, and you started flashing red, you can come right back out to the roof line and you can readjust the outdoor antenna just a little bit offset. Maybe it's 10 degrees, 5 to 10 degrees, which will take you off of the tower itself which usually will limit the amount of signal strength coming in, and that the solid red, or the flashing red light will go away. It'll probably go to a flashing yellow light. So that's one of the easiest things to do. I would always recommend to keep a handful of attenuators. We make a 5, a 10, and a 20 dB attenuator. Because if you just, let's say you're outside, urban setting, really strong outdoor signal, you can't get the antennas redirected. This will allow me with the omnidirectional antenna mounted outside. It just runs in line from the amplifier right into the antenna coming from outside. They connect right into it, and we can reduce that signal up to 20 dB, which would, in all intents and purposes, do the same thing as offsetting the outdoor antenna. So those are two different things that we can really do, is to be able to go out there and either redirect the outdoor antenna, or you can sit there and add an attenuator in line with it. A flashing yellow and a red means that there's oscillation detected. If we have that, again, we have to make sure that that outdoor signal isn't pointing towards the inside of the home. And we also want to try and increase the distance between the indoor and outdoor antennas. Now, for the amplifiers that, this is all the amplifiers but the Fusion 5X, X is an Xavier, they all have the manual gain controls. So you can, in that particular instance, if it was just an AT&T oscillating issue, you could turn the gain down on the AT&T just a little bit, every 5 dB increments until that light turns off, the oscillating light turns off. Test your signal, make sure you still have strong signal throughout the house, and then you can leave the amplifier at that particular setting. What that does for you, however, is it limits the maximum output power of the booster. So I'm going to go back to the picture here. If I took LTE for AT&T here, which is a 64 dB max gain, and I turn it down to 49 to get rid of oscillation, my booster will never go above the 49 dB. The automatic gain controls and all that stuff inside the software will still control the booster as normal, but it knows that it cannot exceed that 49 dB worth of gain. So it is a nice benefit to have with some of the boosters that have the automatic, with the manual gain controls on it. If you were to install one of the larger Force 5 boosters, the Force 5 boosters have dip switches here, and you can see on the down position, they are all off, I mean there's no attenuation, but what differs between the larger Force 5 and the smaller boosters that are out there, what all the other boosters just give you downlink, which means the antenna pushing the signal into the building for control, for attenuation on the booster. The Force 5 will do downlink and uplink, meaning going back out to the tower. Then you can see here you got 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. That just equates up to 1 dB, 2 dB, 4, 8, and 16 dB worth of attenuation. You could turn them all on and essentially turn that band off completely, or you can add just 16 dB, you can add an 8 and a 2 if you wanted to. You can just flip the dip switches to make the system work accordingly. So if you ever got into that issue, give us a call. We'll walk you through which dip switches to work with. Our tech team has been very well versed in this product. Our tech director he's one of the success stories that he started in the warehouse and he worked his way up 15 years ago. He's worked his way up to the engineering and now director of technology. Very smart man when it comes down to the product. Started when he was going to college and this stuff here. So he's a great guy. Really helps you walk you through the different opportunities that are there. So at the end of the day, the carriers do request that you register the booster themselves. So if I had to go into one of these links here and I had to register a booster, and I'm just going to pick on Sprint because it's the easiest one to do. If I click on the Sprint link, it's going to bring me to their Sprint page, hopefully. So this is going to give me an opportunity here that all you have to do is to submit a simple email with this information, the name of the Sprint customer, the make and model of the booster, the Sprint phone number, so on and so forth. This will then alert them that there's a booster in the area. They don't necessarily do anything with it. They just keep it in a database so they can manage their network itself. So if you're a Sprint customer, they require you to go to that. If you're an AT&T customer, they request that you go to the AT&T network to be able to do the same thing. I'll get you guys the proper words this one here. There we go. They took their site down. Let's go to Verizon. Let's see if they fixed that one yet. The spinning wheel of death. All right. Well, we won't worry about that then. So, whatever your customer's carrier is, you don't have to do it for each one of the carriers. So if you're on AT&T, you don't have to go log it on to Sprint. You just have to log it on to AT&T. So you don't have to worry about every single one of them. So that's the only other opportunities that we have here. And if I could get my computer back up and running without it crashing on me like that, I'm going to just close this stuff out so I can get back into it quickly here. The only other thing that we offer to you guys is we have a bunch of marketing support. So if you ever need any type of marketing collateral, all the links that you'll get here once the presentation is over has all the product information sheets. So you can print those off. You can use them as lead behinds for your customers. And then, of course, we have the trifold brochures and things of that nature. So if you want a more of a custom fit, work with us. We'll get your logo from you. We'll be able to put it on the device itself, send you back a PDF version of that so you can get those printed out as well. So before we get into any questions here, the last thing that we have is just the test itself. And as was mentioned earlier, you'll get this test here this afternoon. And this test was just a very, very quick. It is required to become certified. So once you get this thing turned back into us, there'll be an email address to submit it to. And just respond it back right to the email address. I think it's, I'll have to make sure I don't want to say the wrong one, somebody writes it down here, but I'll get you the proper one here. But this is just something that we ask you to fill out, and then it will help us get you the certification back in the mail to you, and you guys will be ready to rock and roll with the product here. So that's kind of a shorter version of our 2-hour-long certification, but we hit all the main points. The tools that we can utilize, the the site survey information, what we're looking for on it, and then, of course, more importantly, where to submit the product and how we want to build out the right systems for you guys to set the right expectations for the customers. So, are there any questions? Well, we've got a lot of questions that are written down here. Let's see. Let me get back to this thing here. All right, one of the questions is, can this webinar be listed again via recording after that? Yeah, we'll be able to provide you with the information, right, guys?
Yes.
Okay.
We've already answered some of those, Eric, so I appreciate you kind of going through those. Just a couple of quick ones. You did a really great job, so there's not been a lot of questions, but there's still some time left here, so if somebody wants to keep adding questions to this, they certainly can. One of the ones that came up just recently was if you have a very strong signal, is there even a reason to have a booster in the system?
Yes, that's a great question. A lot of times there is an incredibly strong signal on the outside of the building, but the building material itself is what's wreaking havoc on the service on the inside of the building. So it's rejecting all that outdoor RF signal. So a lot of times there is a lot of opportunity to be able to put systems in even with stronger outdoor signals. For example, a customer yesterday was able to get in touch with us, and they are downtown Chicago, which you can use your phone everywhere downtown Chicago. So if there's a pizzeria that they're putting together, go figure, Chicago and pizza, they go together pretty well. They just can't use their phones in the inside of it. The back kitchen area needs it, a lobby area needs it, the seating area needs it, the dining room. So they spec'd it out, they got it approved, and they're doing the install this weekend.
That's awesome. Another question that we had was if a client has 2 different carriers that he's utilizing in his home for like work and for personal, how do you handle that?
Yeah, I'm going to try and get back into this presentation to show you guys. Okay, the force quit. It looks like the PowerPoint, but there is a way of doing it. So what we can do, utilizing that antennasearch.com area to find out where the different towers are throughout the neighborhood or the city that you're installing it into. What you can do is you can pinpoint to 2 different locations. You can mount 2 Yagi antennas on the outside of the building, and you can run those 2 cables into a splitter, which we would just use as a combiner, and then into the booster itself. So now you would have, let's say, T-Mobile and Verizon, 2 different areas, 2 different directions, but you have the best signal coming in for both of them. So you can absolutely do that.
Great, thank you, Eric. Another one is, where and how do we get the exam? I can answer that one. There will be an email that goes out that will send a link to the exam, and you complete it and submit it back to SureCall, and they will send you the certification after that's completed. One of the next questions that we had was, will the recording for this webinar be available? We hope to have that, like we normally do, very early in the week next week, immediately after this. And will this work with Boost Mobile and smaller guys?
Yeah, it will, because they utilize the larger carriers networks. They're just resellers. So we'll work with the little the subsidiaries of them as well. Absolutely.
Okay. One of the questions that I get a lot on the phones too, Eric, is can I use RG59 instead of the cable that you're using? I mean RG6 or RG6 quad.
You can, but again, and I might have went over this a little too fast a bit when we did the developing the system, right? So looking at how do we calculate it. Remember, every 100 feet of our LMR cable is about a 6.5 dB loss. If I looked at every 100 feet of RG6 or even RG59, 58, you're sitting at a negative 10.5 or greater. So now it becomes an opportunity. What does my outdoor signal look like? So that's one of the questions on the survey form or building recommendation form, is what cable are we able to utilize?
Okay.
That'll help us understand if we can manipulate the system enough to make it work. It might be you might have to go from a Fusion for Home up to a Fusion 5S or a 5X because of the higher output or downlink power within it to offset the different types of cable. But we can absolutely utilize it. I would say that I couldn't give you a percentage, but I can tell you that a better percentage of our integrator teams, our dealer teams that are out there, are utilizing RG6 that's already existing in the walls, and the systems work just fine.
Excellent. Another question we had was, what if a neighbor installs a booster? Does it affect the one that you've installed?
No, typically it won't. Just because they're separate networks, separate systems. It's kind of like if you were in a high-rise building and you had 10 stories, 10 stories going up, and you had a booster in every floor, you would have a similar situation with your ocular antennas, right? So they want to interfere with each other.
What is the next question that we have is, what if the client uses a pay-as-you-go service?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so pay-as-you-go utilizes more often than not the larger carriers network. Obviously, Cricket utilizes Sprint and Verizon's network. There's a couple other ones that just can't come to the top of my head right now. But they all utilize the larger carriers network, and it'll work just fine with them. We would just have to do a little bit of research to find out which carrier is which, right? So I know GoPhone for AT&T is AT&T's network.
Okay.
We would just have to find out which one it is to ensure we can point it in the right direction.
Awesome, thank you. Another question that came up was, what's the best way to go if you're trying to cover for all carriers?
Mm-hmm. So the best way is utilizing an omnidirectional antenna, which is the tall cylinder. That's the best way of doing it, just because it will allow you to pull in the signal from that 360-degree range. It works great in more urban settings, again, where you have a stronger outdoor signal. If you're in the more rural settings, so if you're out in a national forest somewhere, or you're up in a hunting lodge or just a retreat, that can be a little more challenging to do just because it doesn't have it's not a very high gain antenna, so you can't pull a strong signal into the booster. But typically when you're in those more remote sections, all the carriers share a tower. So, AT&T, Verizon, they all might be on one tower, or they have roaming agreements with each other, so they all kind of work together to fill in those more rural sections.
Great answer.
Omnidirectional is your best way of doing it.
That's what I was figuring too. That's a good answer. Another question is there a way to actually measure signal loss over the cable, or is it just done with a formula?
Nope, you can absolutely measure it. So our signal meter, inside that kit, it comes with multiple adapters. So the little antenna, there's a little rubber ducky or nubby antenna that comes off the top of it. You can unscrew that. You can screw in one of our adapters into it, and then that will give you the ability then to read the signal strength coming right to the antenna spot itself. So if you're in over a 100-foot run from the booster to the to where the antenna location is, it gives you a really good opportunity to plug it in and go, okay, I've got either max gain, or here it'll either read max gain or it's going to read a whatever the signal strength is coming to the antenna spot.
Awesome. One of the questions that popped up was, if Omni won't work for all carriers, can multiple Yagi antennas be integrated into the system?
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of like going back to the question is, if we had T-Mobile on one side and Verizon on the other, so one was north, one was south, you could run the two outdoor antennas into a two-way splitter and then just use it as a combiner and put it into the booster. So you can absolutely do that. I wouldn't go much more than two, just because then you have a lot of different crosstalks, and you typically want to have at least anywhere from about 3 feet away from each antenna before you start running into potential issues that are out there with oscillating. And just the opposite too. Let's say I had to put 4 boosters in a building and I had 1 outdoor antenna. You could run 1 outdoor antenna and then split that to 4 different boosters.
I appreciate that. Another question that popped up was, how does your system compare to a DAS?
So a DAS system is a distributed antenna system, and we're kind of the baby brother to it, right? A DAS system is an opportunity where we are creating more, I don't want to put this, we're creating more users, so we can add more users to a network because I have a direct connection into the carrier's switchboard, if you will. So a DAS system is a very high-end system. That's what you usually find at sporting arenas, convention centers, very, very large hotel rooms, high-rises. We typically see DAS systems being installed. They're pretty expensive, and they, anywhere from your low 200,000 up to well over a couple $1 million for them. We compete in more of the smaller spaces than the DAS system will. Meaning that we're going to compete in the commercial applications or large warehouses. We're going to compete in areas in the residential, where sometimes DAS just isn't a viable solution just because of cost structure. So we typically come in considerably less on the change per dollar, if you will, the cost per dollar. We come in considerably less, and we work very, very similarly. But the main difference is we do not have a direct line into the carrier's switchboard. We're just utilizing the frequencies and the signal strengths that are outside the buildings themselves. When a DAS network will do they actually create another small system, cellular system inside the building.
Awesome. I think we got time for 1 or 2 more questions, Eric. So one I have here in front of me is, as a general rule, is it better to keep the amp closer to the donor or to the inside antennas?
Doesn't really make 6 of these, half dozen of another. Doesn't really matter if we keep it closer. I will say this, that if you're working with a weaker outdoor signal, I want it closer to the outdoor antenna. That way I have less loss.
You want to read that
before I get into the booster itself.
Okay, and then the last question we have is, can your amplifiers be cascaded?
No. No, can't run them into each other just because it'll put them in that overload, because the signal strength will just be way too strong. So in the past, there used to be inline boosters that were made, and the FCC and the carriers outlawed them. They said they weren't available anymore. And there still might be some old ones in the marketplace out there, but there's just nothing new on the market that they're able to do that right now.
Awesome. We're going to end this webinar pretty quickly, but I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew that if you have any additional questions, they can be put out to the tech support team or your inside salesperson, and also to Andy directly if you'd like. I want to thank everyone again for joining us, and to remind you to be on the lookout for the follow-up email with the link to the certification test and all the details on how to claim that $50 discount for the SureCall signal meter. We do plan on posting this webinar, like I said, on the YouTube channel in the next few days. And again, thank you all for taking the time to join us, and have a great day, and we hope to see you next time.